sunny Sunday morning. Greetings and salutations, my friends. Welcome back to Mike Allen from Chicagoland. Broadcasting right now from the town of Paducah, Kentucky. Taking a slight detour this morning of my trip around southern Illinois, across the border, across the Ohio River into the great state of Kentucky, just to check out the town for a brief moment here. I've driven past Paducah several times on Interstate 24 on trips to and from Florida, as well as a couple work trips as well. But this is the first time I've actually pulled off the highway and stopped in the town. So I just wanted to check it out real quick, and then we're going to head back across the border and do some more exploring of southern Illinois before I head home and call this a trip. So please come and join me. So as you could tell, the town of Paducah sits along the Ohio River, and these flood walls protect the town from the river overflowing its banks. I guess in 1937 the town was decimated by flooding, and these walls were built to help protect the town from the floodwaters. And in this section, each section of the wall is painted to kind of showcase the history of Paducah. So let's go check it out. Looks like they were painted in 1996. Designed by Robert Dafford of Lafayette, Louisiana. And I like how each mural just gives a brief overview of what it is you're looking at. In this particular one, it's a couple of former officers with the statue of Chief Paducah. A couple others on their motorcycles. I mentioned earlier the flood of 1937. 90% of the town was covered in floodwaters, and this is a mural to represent that. And this served as one of the city's fire stations between 1910 and 1973 until it was replaced by something a little more modern. The town certainly has its Civil War history as well. Ulysses S. Grant, or United States Grant, unconditional surrender grant, occupied Paducah in 1861. Nathan Bedford attacked Paducah in 1864. Here's a representation of that. His goal was to disrupt communication line and steal as many Union supplies as he possibly could. And Paducah, post-Civil War. Bird's eye view of the town, 1873. One of the things the plaque mentions is how the shipping lanes along the Ohio River helped grow the town, and a big reason why it thrived back in the post-Civil War era. So in 1938, the river froze solid. Some said you'd be able to walk right across to Illinois. Depiction of the riverfront of Paducah in the early 20th century. Note the level of industry taking place. Now, this locomotive was presented to the town of Paducah in 1963 to help commemorate the steam engine era and how the railway helped build and grow the town of Paducah. You don't see many trains with a caboose anymore. And the last painting along the walls here is a representation of the Paducah Coca-Cola Bottling Company, which served the community from 1903 to 2005. And along the river here, they have some information about the Cherokees and the 1838 Indian Removal Act, and how the Cherokee stopped in Paducah for supplies during the Trail of Tears. Said over 1,000 died during the journey westward. More than 4,000 died as a result of their forced relocation. This talks about the Creek Indians using Owens Island right across the river as a place to rest and gather supplies in the town of Paducah. Pretty sure that's Owen Island over there. This town really has a southern vibe to it. I feel like I'm kind of stepping back in time in some ways. You know, they got the brick-laid streets in some sections of the town and a lot of old facades along the buildings. Really enjoying this town. I'm glad I stopped. Just realized that building said Finkel's on it. Made me think of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. And this building here houses a museum and theater company. It's called the Market Theater. Looks like this was a public market between 1827 and 1905, named after General William Clark of Lewis and Clark fame. Here's the front of the building. Because this town is filled with so much history, they have these historical markers set up all along the downtown area. Cross back into the state of Illinois in the town of Brockport, and couldn't do much filming on that bridge. It was definitely a two hands on the steering wheel experience. And as a lot of the towns along the river here, it's protected by these flood walls. So on to the next stop. In the town of Metropolis, Illinois now, where I stayed last night, and in front of the Big John grocery store is this guy here. He looks like one of those repurposed muffler men that you see along Route 66, kind of like the Gemini Giant in Wilmington, Illinois, the Uniroyal Gal in Peoria, Illinois, and the Bunyan statue in Atlanta, Illinois. But I didn't come to Metropolis to see this statue. No, I came to Metropolis to see this statue. Now, roughly 50 years ago, right around the early 70s, the town of Metropolis decided to embrace its name and erect this giant Superman statue. And you see a lot of Superman references around town, as far as, you know, comic books on displays or just pictures hanging up in hotel rooms. So I like that the town has embraced their name and taken upon themselves to erect this giant statue of Superman. He was my favorite superhero growing up as a kid, and this was something I'd always wanted to see. Okay, so I was mistaken. After doing a little bit of research just now online, this 15-foot tall statue was erected in 1993. The idea for a Superman theme park came about in 1972, but it never happened. And in 1986, there was a smaller statue of Superman erected, but wasn't very popular, and the town folks didn't really like it very much. So it was 1993 when they finally built this one, and it's become a pretty popular tourist attraction. So I mentioned in my video profiling the Garden of the Gods that I discovered that place while flipping through an Illinois travel magazine when I was a kid, and that's the exact same way I discovered the Metropolis Superman statue. I took one look at it and said, I gotta visit that place someday. Well, it took almost 30 years, but I'm glad I finally got to do it. This looks like the George Reeves version of Superman. Unfortunately, the actor tragically died in 1959 under nefarious circumstances. No one really knows what happened. He died of a gunshot wound. I got this phone booth here in front of the Superman Museum. This old classic car in front of the museum as well, along with a couple other depictions up here. And this is cool here. It shows the various actors that have portrayed Superman along the way. Christopher Reeves was the one I remember the most because movies came out shortly before I was born, but they were still relatively new when I was a young kid. And then I remember later on Dean Cain. They do have a little gift shop here. Shows a lot of the comic books, some of which I collected as a kid, but I'm not seeing the Death of Superman comic book, which I stood in line for when I was about 11 or 12 years old. Waiting to get my hands on one of those. Inside here they got this talking telephone, along with the statue of Superman. Well, here's a version of the Death of Superman. I don't recall that cover. $24.95. Thinking I should get it, but I do have a copy somewhere in storage. Maybe I'll look for it when I get home. And we have a book here about the artist behind Superman, Joe Shuster. It's the famous last page of the Death of Superman comic book. The day that a Superman died. Now I'm remembering as a kid that a few months after the Death of Superman comic book came out, they did publish a series of comic books where Superman did come back to life in several different forms, but then I kind of lost interest after that and stopped collecting comic books. Can't really remember what happened in the storyline after that, but I do know they did bring Superman back to life. And you could buy Superman merchandise branded by the town of Metropolis, Illinois. And they do sell Clark Kent glasses, $4.95. And that was the Superman action figure that I had as a kid. I think we might have sold it at a garage sale. So here's a repurposed Bob's Big Boy statue in a Superman costume. I haven't been a big boy since, oh boy, probably I was like 12 or 13 years old. And what else we got here? We got Marilyn Monroe. And there's Bob's Big Boy right there. It's one of the things that this area is known for is being called Little Egypt, and there's no real historical documentation explaining why that is, but there are some solid theories as to why it's called Little Egypt. One of them is during the winter of 1837, they had a very late spring and the crops were suffering due to the weather. So a lot of people from northern Illinois came down to this region of the state where they weren't affected by the cold weather and bought a lot of grain and food products and things of that nature. And it was compared to the biblical times of Jacob when people traveled to Egypt during a famine. Another theory I found is that the early settlers of the area thought that the land along the Ohio and Mississippi rivers was very similar to the fertile lands of the Nile River in Egypt. But whatever the story is, the region has definitely embraced its Little Egypt moniker. Southern Illinois University in Carbondale is named the Salukis. That's their mascot. And the Saluki is an ancient Egyptian breed of dogs. And the town I'm heading to next is got the same name as one of the major cities in Egypt, although it's pronounced differently. This is definitely off the beaten path. So the town of Cairo is spelled the same way as Cairo, Egypt, but the locals here spell it Cairo. And there's been a lot of YouTubers that have come down and checked out, done some urban exploration of this town. which is loaded with history. Unfortunately, not all of it good. But I'd encourage you to go check out some of those channels and do some research on this town. It's got a lot of history to it due to its geography and its location. Just gonna kind of do a little bit of exploring and then head over to the very southern tip of Illinois. So this was the famous Gem Theater here in Cairo, Illinois. Long since shuttered, but still a historical spot nonetheless. So this is Commercial Avenue here in Cairo, Illinois. These open parcels of land here used to be lined with buildings. Many drugstores, restaurants, shops, places to eat. That was long ago. Some of those buildings are still standing, but they have long since closed their doors. Take a drive down Commercial Avenue here. Imagine all of this used to be buildings, stores and shops. And if one were paying attention, you'd see that this used to be a trolley track that went right through downtown here on 8th Street and Commercial Avenue. Now, the town of Cairo was really built because of the steamboat businesses that would come along the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, and it brought about a lot of industry, and with that came a lot of wealth. And that's essentially what built the town. But over time, as technology improved with the railway, the steamboat engine companies really weren't as vital to the economy as the time went by. So the town kind of suffered because of that. And also, the town has a steep history of racism, and you can learn a lot about that through just very quick Google searches. It's unfortunate because this is such a really neat area. It sits on a peninsula right in between the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. So I'm actually going to go check out the spot where those two rivers converge. So why don't you come and join me? Take one last quick drive down Commercial Avenue. Inside Fort Defiance State Park now, which during Civil War times was a military post for the Union Army, and I can understand why because of its geographic location. This is a perfect point if you wanted to set up a military base right where the Ohio and Mississippi rivers meet. So we're going to go check out that spot right now. Here it is. This is where the Ohio River flows into the Mississippi. Continues down that way. And right down there on the other side of this tree is the absolute farthest south you can go while still being in the state of Illinois. And we're going to head down there right now. Standing on the very southern tip of Illinois, along the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. Now looking due east into the state of Kentucky, keep going, actually almost parallel to Virginia Beach, Newport News, Virginia. It just goes to show you how big the state of Illinois is from top to bottom. Back off in the distance there is the town of Cairo. And that bridge right there takes you into the state of Missouri on the other side of this island here. So 3 states converging here where the Ohio and Mississippi rivers meet. Well, it was great to travel all the way down here to the very bottom of the state of Illinois, but now I gotta make the nearly 6-hour-long journey back home to the Chicagoland area. It's been a fun journey, but it's time to head home. 371 miles to Chicago. Stopped off at 17th Street Barbecue in Marion, Illinois. Get some lunch before heading back on the road. Memphis in May, World Grand Champions 1990, and again in 1994 and 1992. Now, I discovered 17th Street Barbecue here in Marion by basically just doing some research on places to eat around the state of Illinois, and it's always popping up on top 10 lists of places to check out and eat. So I just thought I'd give it a shot and see how it goes. I ordered the beef brisket and I ordered a side of fries with it, so let's see if it's as good as advertised. Like any good barbecue place, they have an assortment of sauces here. The original, 17th Street Red, and another one here, the Little Kick. And this place has also been featured on the Food Network. I believe one of their chefs was on an episode of Chopped and Beat Bobby Flay. And the beauty of these barbecue joints is the food comes quickly, because they've probably been smoking it all day. Well, some very good barbecue. However, I will recommend that if you're on a diet, you better leave it at home if you're going to come eat here. On Interstate 88 now, on the home stretch of what's been a very long day that started off in Paducah, Kentucky. Definitely ready to get home now. So finally made it home after a roughly 6-hour drive from the southern tip of Illinois at Fort Defiance State Park, just outside of Cairo. It's been a long day. A lot of time behind the wheel, a lot of time on the road and the highways, and very, very happy to finally be back home. But I'm also equally happy that I had a chance to tour parts of southern Illinois that I had never seen before, and hoping to get back there again someday and see even more of the things I didn't get a chance to check out on this trip. And I really appreciate you for joining me and coming along with me as I went on this journey through southern Illinois and parts of Paducah, Kentucky. So anyways, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. You can also look down at links in the description below for other ways to help me in growing this channel. Anyways, this is Mike Allen from Chicagoland, signing off from the great state of Illinois. I'll be back next Friday with another video inside the Chicago area this time. But until that time, don't you go changing.